What's up, my comic book brothers and my comic book sisters from another mister. Today we gotta talk about the brutal and violent rise of Gunslinger Spawn, the full story. And this is coming out of Spawn issues 174 and 175, brought to you by RatedComics. Before we get into the content, link in description if you wish to go from issue to issue. Also link in description if you wish to purchase any of the comic books in this video and or other comic books. Support the art, support the industry. Lastly, if you like the content we're throwing up, like the video, subscribe to this channel. It'll help RatedComics to make more content like this. With all that being said, let's get into the content. It's February 1881, the hill west of Colorado Springs. It was one hell of a winter. Only a damn fool or a desperate man would be riding out alone in that blizzard like that. And this brother, according to this narration, he guesses he was both. But thank God for his buffalo hide coat. He got it from a private in the 9th, who took it as spoils of war from the Comanches during the State Plains Uprising in '74. A buffalo coat for a buffalo soldier. Now the numbing cold had an effect on him, and he began to see images forming. Like a drowning man, his life passed before his eyes. And we get this flashback, and the narrator talks about he conducted himself well against the renegade Indians of Kansas and Colorado, was mentioned in letters 4 times, and rose to the ranks of sergeant. Later, he was obliged to change his name to Henry Richard Simmons, but back then, he was Francis Charles Parker, the son of cotton slaves, an officer of the United States Cavalry, and equal of any man. Or so he thought, until they were posted to Fort Concho near the town of San Angelo, Texas. And he's heard that General Sheridan once said, if he owned hell in Texas, he would rent out Texas and live in hell. I would not argue against it because it was just that bad of a town. Things were just that crazy. Relations with the citizens of San Angelo were never easy, but they came to a head a few months later when one of his own in the United States Cavalry got shot. Now, when the men heard of the murderer and that the criminal was walking free and bragging about it, there was no holding them. So he rode along with his comrade to the saloon where it happened, and some of the men had put together a declaration which was duly delivered to an attentive audience at the saloon. In other words, they demand justice or death, and someone must suffer for what happened. And one patron's like, okay, happy to oblige. But Henry Simmons noticed that. His cool head and steady hand, he drew first blood, and all hell went loose in that saloon. Now, what really happened there? Because so much happened there that no one really knows. Some say a dozen or more lay dead at the end of it. Some say that nobody was slain at all, but he can't vouch for any accuracy on any account. All he knew for sure is that once out of San Angelo, he considered himself a fugitive. He stopped only to gather a few possessions from his billet at Fort Concho, and then he had to keep riding like the devil was at his back, north towards Colorado Springs, to Alma, the love of his life, Alma. He lost count of the days that he journeyed. He was depending on the kindness of strangers to feed him. He knew he could not ride into Colorado Springs where the law would be waiting for him, so he headed into the hills above the city with the idea that he would somehow send word to Alma. A blizzard descended on him, and he thought he would have to give in to the stormy, icy embrace. It was so cold he thought he was gonna die. If it were not for his fiance's smiling face, he would have nothing to live for. Then he saw him. He appeared from nowhere, as if he was conjured right out the snow, dressed all in white on a horse as black as death. Given at that distance, he could feel his eyes upon him. And then without a sign, he turned away and rode away. And he figured, as coatless as he was in this weather, there must be shelter nearby. So he followed him. He lost sight of the rider, but after a short while, he came upon a heartwarming sight of a cabin. The light was spilling from the door. It seemed welcoming enough, and the blood on the snow, not so much. But within the cabin was a sight that he could not turn away from. It turned his blood colder than the chill mountain winds. 4 children lay dead, with the woman who was their mother clutching a shotgun, defending them. She died defending her children, and they were brutally murdered. Now, he never heard the marshals and the deputies coming up from behind him. If he had drawn his weapon, then they would have shot him out of self-defense, or as they would say. They look at him like, Jesus Christ, look like we got a mess here, boy. You robbing the dead, boy? And they pin this on him, and he tells them, I didn't do this. I know who did this, said the marshal. And guess what? I know who you are too, Mr. Parker, calling him by his birth name. We have the Telegraph here. Heard news of trouble down in San Angelo too. So we know you caused this trouble, and we trace you over here. So guess what? Until the meantime, They're going to hold him at a jail in town until the snow abates. And this marshal tells her that the military prefers a firing squad to a rope necktie. That's a civilian's death any man could hope for. And Simmons like, well, I was hoping to die in bed with my wife holding my hand and a dozen grandchildren sitting by me saying prayers for me. Huh. Well, as they arrived into town, Simmons saw that man in white once again, and Simmons points him out. Who is that man, Marshall? And Marshall's like, are you snowblind or something? Or dreaming, son? There's no one up there. Okay, well, that's a trip right there. So they get into the jail, and the marshal tells Mr. Parker, calling him by his birth name, not the new name Simmons, make the acquaintance of Jeremy Winston, more commonly referred to as Hero Old Job. It was his family that was massacred. He killed his own family, said Simmons, and this Kemper brother is like, I'll rip your lying lips off your mouth. It was Kemper's man, and you know it. Set that murdering jackal in front of me without these bars to hold me, and I'll persuade the truth from him. This brother has some tongue right there. And the marshal's like, chill, man, you'll have your day in court. Now Silas will watch these two over you. No visitors will set foot in his office until I return. You got that, Silas? And Silas like, okay, I'm just gonna drink my whiskey, then I'll give him all due respect. And Kemper's like, don't you think I'll spare you, Marshal? I'll visit my vengeance on every last soul who draws breath in this god-forsaken hellhole. And keep in mind, we did cover who Kemper was in Gunslinger Spawn Origins Explained video. I'll put the link in description as well. And by the way, if you're liking the content so far, you know what to do. Like the video and subscribe to this channel. But with all that being said, let's get back into the content. Silas pours himself an nice glass of whiskey. And he tells Simmons, you better get used to old Job sermonizing. He used to be a preacher before he went native and set up the house with that Indian squaw. Lord knows what kind of god he worships now. My wife has a name, says Kemper, and I'll give my allegiance to any god or devil who grant me a single day of freedom to pay back the blood of my wife and children. You will hobble your lip and give me some peace, says the Silas. He wants to drink his whiskey. So Simmons asks him what she called, what's your wife's name? Kimmy. That's a good name, says Simmons. She was a good woman, says Kemper. So Simmons asks, what happened? Who is this Kemper fella? He tells his story. It's about he lived peacefully enough on his own land. For 2 decades, he trapped fur and traded honestly with the people of Bane. Then he tells him silver was struck upon his land and Kemper made an offer to buy his land and to buy his home. But Winston tells Kemper there's no price that will buy his land or his home. And here he stands. Now, later on, he wasn't there when his men returned. And his conjecture is that they thought they could intimidate my wife and child. But they don't know Kimmy. She don't cotton much to intimidation. They murder them all. And not one man in this town will lift a finger against the guilty party. So I went after him myself. I put down 2 of his lackeys before I was subdued. It's their blood you see on me. He'll spill the blood of every bastard in this town and bathe in it gladly. That could be arranged, says the man in white. Once again, he appears with no forewarning. The deputy was dead to the world, although he only took him 1 glass of whiskey. Come on, lightweight. So the man in white asked him, gentlemen, what would you do to leave this place? What would you give? And Winston's like, what price are you asking? The only thing you guys got left to barter, that's your soul. Says Winston, I imagine the devil with the ruddier complexion. Do you think the devil has the inclination or the time to barter for a single human soul? He'll have it when the time comes, whether you will it or not. The one I represent is the demon Malbosia. And Winston's like, sir, you're clearly insane, but if what you're saying has any ounce of truth to it, I'm in. Let me do this. I'll even kiss the ass of the demon. Well, that's not required, says the man in white. What is required from you guys, along with your soul, is your eternal allegiance. In exchange, you'll be given the time on this earth and the power to achieve your heart's desire. And what do you suppose my heart desires, says Winston. Vengeance on the ones who betrayed and abused your family. And you can see in Winston's eyes, he wants to believe him because he has this rage of vengeance that he wants to fulfill. But at the same time, can this be true? And Simmons asks him, what about mine? You just want to hold the love of your arms again for one last time. And Simmons looks down in shame because he's tempted, but at the same time, he can't fulfill it because his wife would not want a man who's given up his soul. She would spit in my face. You intrigue me, says the man in white. I made this offer many times and I've never been refused because I know in advance the man I seek. This time, I'm not certain. I'm drawn to both of you. I must be sure that I make the right choice. The hell with your philosophy, says Jeremy Winston. Simmons has refused your offer. Now let me free because I accept your offer. And the man in white's like, no, I think not. You doubt me. In order to make this pact, you must believe. You are right, Job. Kemper will not let you live to stand trial. When you are looking death in the face, and you will, then I'll ask again for the final time, and you will accept. And what will that be, says Winston. And the man in white's like, well, I believe that's death knocking on the door right now. And death does knock on the door, and these marshals are like, unlock these men, we gotta go into trial right now. And one thing that Winston notices is these men do not see the man in white. He's standing right there as plain as a boy on the whore's backside, and they don't see him. So they proceed to, to the hanging. And the prisoner known as Old Job is hereby condemned to hang by his filthy neck until death, and the Simmons with him. I'm not gonna say that. They want the brother hung by his neck too. One marshal suggests we should use longer rope so the drop stops her neck, but the other marshal's like, nah, Mr. Kemper wants the rope short so the crowd here can have a show, and he wants to see Winston struggle a little bit. And before the drop begins, Winston sees the man in white. Now we'll see if his offer is good. And he tells him, I'll take your offer now, demon. So the man in the crowd, Mr. Kemper's like, what the hell is he raving about? He's a loon, Mr. Kemper. Always was, says his comrade. I'll see each and every one of you in hell, says Winston. The drop starts. Simmons, all he can say is his last words, is the love of his life, Alma. Now what happened next, Simmons remembers as one long nightmare. It began as the rope bit into his neck and his vision turned red. Above the ringing in his ears, he heard the voice of the marshal. Cut those two men down, says the marshal. Damn it, I should have gone for the long rope. That way the death would be quicker. And this man wants to end this death and get on with the road, So he wants to kill the Bible curse thumper Winston first. As he lifts his shotgun, ready to take aim, the man in white touched the shooter's arm. No more than that, just a touch, and his life was spared. Simmons' life was spared. The last he saw before he passed out was his face. His damn face. So Simmons wake up and he's like, how is he? He'll live. No, this isn't right, says Simmons. Don't try to speak. You just been damn near choked to death, says the doctor. He wakes up at the doctor's office. Rest easy now. I turned him down. It was Job who made the deal. It was Job who should have died. And the doctor's like, Job is laid up in my board office. For good or ill, the old bastard has breathed his last breath. So unless Jesus Christ himself passes by him to raise him, we'll see no more of old Job. And Job, Winston, wakes up, eyes wide open, and his transformation to Gunslinger Spawn begins because the deal he made, the deal came through. How does it feel, says the man in white. Does your new flesh suit you? It feels like dead meat. Well, then it's done then. No turning back. A deal is a deal. You belong to Malbosia now. Here, take a look in this glass. And as he looks in the glass, it's an awful sight that he looks at, but he's fine with it. It's the last sight those sons of bitches will ever see. So the man in white's like, good, I brought you your clothes and your weapons. With the recent deaths accounted for, the population of Bane stands at 257. You think 24 hours would be enough? Start the clock, my friend, says the new Gunslinger Spawn, and let the killing commence. And that's where we end this issue of Spawn, issue number 174. Obviously a lot of story here, and this is a real true origins of Gunslinger Spawn, the first Gunslinger Spawn, and I got to say I'm glad I went old school with it. Link in description if you wish to add this comic book to your comic book collection. And also, this is a key issue, the first appearance of Gunslinger Spawn, so as the new Gunslinger Spawn ongoing series becomes more popular and ongoing, and who knows, will Gunslinger Spawn make an appearance in a show or a film, this comic book will rise in value because it's already worth a few pennies. I should say it's worth some coin at this point in time. And I did say part 2, so if you haven't checked out part 1 of this video, I'll put the link in description, card at the end of this video. You gotta check it out, but I'll give you a quick summary of it real quick. When a mysterious man in white offers the two men the chance to cheat death, Al Simmons' ancestor refuses to sell his soul. Old Job, however, takes the offer. The Buffalo Soldier narrowly escapes being hanged, but old Job is not so lucky. That night, his corpse rises from the dead as a hellspawn, eager to wreak a terrible revenge. I don't even know a lot of context, but that's it. So we begin this issue in a private room in the Lucky Strike, Bane's popular saloon and cat house. We see this lady about to, get jiggy with it with this hangman. This hangman's like, come on, lady, I know you saw the way old Job was wriggled up like that. I'm long, I'm strong, I'm down to get the friction on. Anyways, I'm putting a lot more on it than what it really is. But he tells her, have you ever had a hangman in your bed? And she says no. And she screams because she sees something behind the hangman. He's thinking, I believe the lady's impressed. And Gunslinger Spawn with his hand on the gun's like, nah, I'll take credit for that. So in downstairs, we see Ed Kemper talking about, yeah, what's good for me is good for the town of Bane. And this town of Bane is going to prosper once I acquire old Job's land. And everyone's just like, okay, we're gonna celebrate. And then all of a sudden they hear a gunshot. And Ed Kemper's like, what the hell is that? And the bartender's like, well, Carl's upstairs with Nancy. And Ed Kemper's like, does he always have to fire off his cannon when he's having his way with the doxy? Come on now. Somebody needs to go up there and tell that man to hold his nose. Well, apparently it can't. So Carl's mask with blood goes on top of their poker table. What in the hell? Is this someone's damn fool idea of a joke? No, they realize that that's Carl's mask. And Gunslinger Spawn tells him, I told you, I see you in hell, Kemper. Just didn't have the patience to wait on you dying, so I brought hell along with me for your convenience. Oh, Job, you call me, huh? Well, here's a new scripture for you. I am returned to cast abroad the rage of my wrath, returned to tread the wicked in their place. And I looked up that scripture, and that scripture is from Job chapter 40, verse 11. Here's your hangman safe from the sin of fornication. Oh, Lord, is that all Ghost Job? Yeah, that is Job, so it doesn't matter. Just shoot the damn bastard, says Ed Kemper, and all hell breaks loose in that saloon. Gunslinger Spawn, Jeremy Winston, is just like, I'm just taking a fine shooting, gentlemen. There's living proof you can't kill a corpse. But this corpse can surely kill you. And he shoots back at him, and they all go down like gunslinging dominoes. Run, Kipper, run as hard and fast as you like, boy, says Gunslinger Spawn. I'll find you when I'm good and ready. Well, he's good and he's ready. It's just a matter of time, right? So Gunslinger Spawn gets shot by this shotgun, and it leaves a good sized hole in his chest. And all he can do is admire that hole. And he's like, well, what the hell have I become? What did you people make me do? And it's just rage and confusion and anger that he's going through, and revenge. And he shoots. And you could tell these bullets are not your typical bullets. And he notices that. It seems my shooting irons have been approved upon too. And this guy is ready to leave, hands up like, please, please don't shoot me. A Gunslinger Spawn's like, did I give you permission to leave? I didn't do nothing. I swear. Nothing? You did nothing, says Gunslinger Spawn. There lies your guilt. Boom, and shoots him. If you haven't watched part 1, Spawn 174, you gotta watch it, because I left a lot of context out as to why this is happening, because this issue is just a serious bloodbath. Francis Parker, the ancestor to Al Simmons, wakes up to a sound, distant gunfire. But his dream, before he wake up, he dreamed of a man in white and is offered a cheap death for the price of one eternal soul. Settle back, son, says the doctor. That'll be the Saturday night rowdies letting off some steam at the saloon. And the marshal's like, I have to leave you guys here, Doc. I'll send Silas back here if I come across him. Anyone tries to come up in here, you take one of those rifles from the back, because this ain't your typical Saturday night rowdy. There's a whole lot of gunfire and something is going down. And the doctor's like, I'm not a shooter. Mine's a healing profession, Marshal. I never handle the gun. So they go outside and they see that the saloon is on fire. And the doctor's like, that's no kind of fire I've ever seen. And it's not. So they see Silas, and Silas is like, oh, Job has come back. That's the end of him. He's done. So doctor's like, don't let these flames near you, Marshal. That's no normal flame. And Francis Parker, Al Simmons' ancestor, is like, well, I'm going out. You know, I gotta do this. And the doctor tells us, get your ass back in the cell. Well, he's right. There's nothing normal about this. Well, you aren't fit to be on your feet, says the doctor. Well, I'm fit enough, and you need a man who can handle a gun. Oh, says the Marshal, you want a gun now? You want me to put a weapon in the hand of a man wanted for treason, desertion, and murder? And Francis Parker's like, I guess I do. So we go back to this pandemonium of Gunslinger Spawn's revenge and the resurrection of him, and he's just going to work. And when the doctor finally sees us up close, he's like, Lord, have mercy. Mercy, says Gunslinger Spawn. You'll find no mercy. Boom, shoots, and he shoots him right there, and the doctor's like, damn, that burns. This ain't your typical bullet right there. And he goes to work, and some more work, and all these gunshots keep going at him. So Francis Parker and the Marshal keep shooting. All they notice is that Gunslinger Spawn disregarded their fire. He turned away and walked away like they didn't exist, and he goes on the hunt for Kemper. Come on out, Kemper, I smell you stink. Damn you if you didn't piss yourself back there. And Kemper's like, I never killed a human being for the pleasure of it, Job. And he's hiding inside. If that's who you truly are, your wife and child were not intended to die. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Now get the hell out of my town. He throws his dynamite at Gunslinger Spawn. He catches it, looks at it just for shits and giggles. I just want to see if it has any effect on me. And it explodes on his face. But the end result is it just takes the skin off his face and he looks more hideous than before. Your turn, Kemper. No, please, says Kemper. Look at you. How did filth like you come into this world? And he puts him in a chokehold, lifts him up, and gets a close-up. And Gunslinger Spawn just adds more insult to injury at that point. What were you? The last squirt from a limp prick? Spatter in some pox-ridden horror stinking cot? I had to make sure I didn't say the C-U-N-T word, because damn, I almost did that. I'll give you a finer exit from this life than the manner of your conception. And he puts a stick of dynamite in his mouth and we're just gonna take a moment of silence to admire the artwork and the sheer brutality with that panel right there. So all Marshall and Francis Parker can do is just watch in sheer shock. And they come to the conclusion that that thing is some kind of demon I'm gonna send for help. Come on, let's move before he turns his attention to us. Well, too late for that. So Francis Parker's like, what are you doing? I'm sending a telegraph. What will you tell him? I doubt that a tale of a walking dead man will bring them running. I'll say a gang of claim jumpers are warring with Kemper shooting up the town. So the marshal asks, what's he doing here anyway? And Francis Parker remembers from part 1, he's keeping his promise. He will kill every man, woman, and child in this town. It's hopeless. Don't do it. Forget that telegraph. Well, he's like, well, then if it's hopeless, then you might as well join Francis Parker, and join he does. So when they go outside, the marshal tells him, if by some miracle you escape this town, the army will not be looking for you. Francis Parker is officially dead. Because in his message, it's a double lynching, because Francis Parker was supposed to be hanged with old Job, so they confirmed him dead. So if he makes it out alive, change your name or something. And then Francis Parker's like, okay, thank you, Marshall. I appreciate that. But it seems fate is always ready to take it with one hand as it gives it to the other. Just as Francis Parker felt hope rise within him, it was snatched away from him once more as Gunslinger Spawn goes in for the kill. If ever a man can say to have looked death in the face, then he is the man that can say that and live to tell about it. And the man in white, Mammon, tells Gunslinger Spawn, not him. You may kill them all to the last squalling infant, but not him. Old Job seemed reluctant to do his master's bidding. His fingers tightened on his throat, and Francis Parker slipped away into oblivion once more. When he wakes up in the coffin. Where am I? Well, surely is in heaven, said Gunslinger Spawn, as he's more calm because he already enacted his revenge on the town. He was right to spare you. Of all people in this town, you are innocent of this crime. You have nothing more to fear from me, as Gunslinger Spawn stands overlooking his wife and children and his family that were brutally murdered in part 1. My family are in veg now, says Gunslinger Spawn. Then Francis Parker's like, so you'll kill no more? There are none left. So Francis Parker's like, you killed them all? My God, even the children. Before he can finish saying that word, Gunslinger Spawn puts his index finger on his mouth. He's like, shh, don't speak. I'm going to take you out of here. You do best not to rile me up, or I may forget that I'm supposed to let you live. And so Francis Parker left the town of Bane, and Gunslinger Spawn as well. For all his strength, dragging him around, Job labored as if the coffin bore all the weight of his sins. And it did. And his sins were many. So when they get to the edge of the cliff, Gunslinger Spawn's like, I'll say farewell to you, then perhaps you'll remember me in your prayers. And he pushes him down the cliff, tied up in the coffin. And that was the last time he saw the pitiful creature that had been old Job. Not old Job, but old Job. Don't even pronounce the D, son. And I'm calling myself son in this video. This is weird. Okay, I'm going back to the content now. So at the bottom of the cliff, Mammon, the man in white, pulls up and he's like, I hope you're not too shaken by your descent. Don't worry, he pulls out a knife. I don't intend to use this knife on you. You are far too precious to me. And Parker's like, precious? But I'm not the one you were looking for. It was Job who took your offer. You said there could only be one. And the man in white's like, yes, in each generation there could only be one hell spawn. But I'm never wrong. I realize now why you were brought to me. One day there will be a hell spawn greater than all the others. One who will make this whole world what Job has made of Bane. The seed is in you. I believe one of your forebears, or descendants, will stand by me and rule the world. Here, go to her. Go to your Alma. Have children. I'm a patient man. I can wait. And he leaves. In the coffin, Parker discovers there was a folded sheet of paper, a bill made out to a widow of a man whom he was attended for, Henry Thomas Simmons. He took the name of a dead man and married Alma as Henry Simmons. He never saw the man in white again, but now his wife is expecting their firstborn. A terrible dread has descended upon him, and he writes a letter. I write this for you, my children, for my grandchildren, for all my generations to come. I know that one day he will return to make the offer I refuse. This is my warning. You must turn your back on him. To accept his pact is worse than death. The promise he makes you may taste sweet on your tongue, but the bitter aftertaste will last for eternity. And that is the end of Spawn issue number 175, part 2, the unsettling conclusion of Gunslinger Spawn's origins. What do you guys think of the comic book? Comment below, let me know. I thought this was a gangster read. And by the way, I did look up these 2 issues because Spawn 174 is the first appearance of Gunslinger Spawn and Spawn 175 is the second appearance of Gunslinger Spawn. These 2 together, they're worth some coin. It's a lot of money, I would say, for a comic, but at the same time, when you're dealing with key issues and a popular character, and I believe Gunslinger Spawn will gain popularity over time, you don't want to buy this comic to read it. You want to buy it as an investment, to hold it and cherish it. That's my thoughts here. So I'm happy that I did a review on this, and I thought this was a gangster read. But with all that being said, Spawn issue number 175, what you guys think of the comic book? Comment below, let me know. And also, if you like the content we're throwing up, you know what to do. Don't be shy, don't be stingy. Here at Rated Comics, we do awesome comic book reviews, comic book related content with the occasional comic book giveaway. Also, link in description if you want to check out RatedComics.com for some amazing comic books. We have a lot of Rated Comics exclusives to choose from. Great to add to your collection or just for the sake of reading, but preferably to your collection because they are limited in print. Thank you again for watching. Until next time.